It's so good to be here with you. This is our sixth episode for our first season.
It is.
Can't believe it's number six already.
I know. That seems to have gone very quickly.
It has.
Yes.
And we've had a chat about what we're going to share with our listeners today, which is a bit of a reflection episode. We are going to share, I guess, some thoughts about what it's been like recording this season of Between Two Psychs podcast. And we just want to, I guess, share a little bit about our journey together and maybe tell the listeners about how we even met and how this even came about. And then the learning that we have gained from undertaking this project.
Which is quite a significant amount, actually. It's been a journey, a great journey, though.
It's
Yeah,
been so fun.
absolutely. I've loved it. Loved it.
Would you like to kick us off, Claire?
I can, yes. So, Isabel and I belong to a Facebook group for psychology supervisors. And Isabel posted, was it around a year ago now,
Yeah, nearly a year ago.
looking for a co-host to for a podcast. And it's something that I'd actually been thinking about, how a podcast for particularly provisional psychologists, particularly from a supervisor perspective, would be something that I'd be very interested in putting together. But it really was just a very, very small idea. And so I really jumped at the chance to respond to this. And yeah, I felt like we hit it off immediately. There was a sense of we
Yeah,
both wanted to convey the same message
yeah,
and the same type of content.
yeah.
And yes, it was Isabel's idea to make it a video podcast. I'm not sure I would have been that brave to start with, but I'm glad that you did.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you for even just being open-minded enough and brave enough to do this with me because I remember telling you how I had been doing a little bit of recording on my YouTube channel, The Psychologist Within, for a year or so before we embarked on this project. And I remember doing it and thinking, gosh, I really wish I had a colleague to do this with. It would be so much more fun just to bounce ideas off, to bounce conversation off. And I think I knew that it would just enhance the whole experience for me personally and professionally too. Um, and I remember being on the psychology supervisors page on Facebook and seeing your name pop up quite a bit in some of the chats that we have there and thinking, oh, wow, Claire is, very experienced. She's been doing supervising for a long time. She runs all these courses. I'm have probably been referring some of my prof psychs to Claire to do some of their courses. And so when I put the post on the page asking for anyone to team up with me to do this, having absolutely no knowledge or understanding of how to do what I wanted to do. I was so stoked when you responded. It was like, yes, I've got a good one.
Oh, thank you. Because
Yeah.
I remember some of your posts around some of the videos you were doing and posting on YouTube. And I was thinking you were just so brave and
Oh,
putting yourself out there and
yeah.
taking initiative to do all of this.
I
Um,
have I have to confess, I think some of that drive came from that weird hormonal experience that happens when a woman is pregnant and then has a baby. I need to delve into this a bit deeper. Maybe this could come into one of our future episodes, but something very strange happened to me during that time of my life. And it was an energy and a force that I've never experienced before. I think, sometimes when you have dreams or ideas like, oh, it'd be so great to do this, or I'd love to do that. And, maybe there's a part of us that goes, oh, like that's too hard, or, you'll never do that. Well, the hormones made me do it. There was
well,
no stopping me. And now here I am.
I'm glad they did.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And that desire to create something. And
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely. Yeah, yeah. No, it's so exciting to have space to have time in our life professionally and personally where we do allow ourselves to be brave and commit to doing something that maybe that critical inner critic part of us might not be so keen on, and just to ignore that and go, F it, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Just do it. I
Mm,
think there's a huge component there, that inner critic, that tells us that, and I think we do, so many of us have this, that tell us that we can't do this, it's going to be too hard, do we know enough,
mm,
have enough to offer?
mm,
There can be so many unhelpful messages through
yeah,
that. And
yeah.
really just being able to tune that out a little bit, because I certainly had a lot of those messages popping up for me, a
Mm,
lot of those stories. And I really had to tune those out and literally turn the volume down on those in order to be able to focus on what we were going to
mm,
do.
mm.
And it was so much easier having another person
Yeah,
um, to do that with. So when I first connected with you and we had this conversation around bouncing ideas and really making it quite a conversational podcast,
yeah,
it
yeah.
felt a lot less effortful and a lot less pressured, I have to say.
Yeah. It's sort of like this concept of like we have great conversations between colleagues, between psychs all the time in between sessions or in peer or group supervision. And that's sort of what was in my mind. I've had this urge to capture those experiences, to capture those conversations, because I've used the term nuggets of gold. There are some great nuggets of gold, and I just thought, oh my gosh, it would be so awesome to share this with other psychs, in particular early career psychs, so that they can hear that it is normal for us to question and to process and to experience what we experience. So yeah, it's so great that you were willing to be on board with me with that. And Claire, I think just from the beginning, and if I can share with the listeners a little bit about that process, that creative process, you know, Claire and I didn't just kind of, launch in and dedicate hours and hours and hours and days and days and days to this all at once. It was a creeper. We sometimes in our schedules we only had time to meet once a month, and sometimes it had to be after all the kids were in bed and maybe for an hour at max. But we were committed, and we decided to keep that up, the consistency, even though it maybe wasn't as frequent as we would have liked. We just kept it up, and through uh the those time increments that we committed, we ended up creating something, and that's really special. So if anyone's ever thinking about doing anything, a business or a podcast or a YouTube channel or a TikTok channel or a website with great resources or whatever it might be, just the value in just committing those tiny snippets of time, it does add up if you just stick at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think about a lot of our provisional psychologists who might be listening, who are maybe struggling with some of the internship requirements. There's quite a lot to get done.
Yeah.
And just pushing through and keeping track of the overall goal, keeping that in sight, can be so, so helpful. Like you said, sometimes there isn't always the time that we want to dedicate to things. Sometimes life happens,
Yeah.
but it's about, I guess, progressing persistently, even if
Mm,
it's at a slower pace than we would like, but just that persistence, and incrementally that just builds up to
mm,
something. So if anybody here is feeling a little overwhelmed with all of the demands and all of the things that they want to get done, sometimes just slowing down a little bit and
mm,
allowing that to sort of happen over time almost can speed up the process, because I
mm,
think that it's so easy to rush things and then become too overwhelmed that we sort of stop
mm,
or we lose momentum.
feeling that pressure, noticing if you're feeling that pressure and giving yourself permission to take the foot off the pedal, so to speak, to maybe set some boundaries with your own processes that are going on in your own mind or with the people that are around you, and just saying, you know what, I will get there. It is going to happen if I just look at my feet and not at the mountain ahead of me and just take one step at a time. I'll get there.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Can I give credit to my mum for sharing that with me while I was studying psych? I don't know where she got it from, but man, I use that a lot in my just as a visual aid if I was ever, feeling overwhelmed. It was great.
Mm, mm, yeah, one step at a time. Absolutely.
Mm,
We,
mm,
each step means something, and it builds up.
it does. It does.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I hope it's nice for everyone to hear a little bit about how Claire and I teamed up and how this podcast happened, the process that we went through, and sharing some of our reflections on what we've learned. Um, we have a little bit more to share though. So this isn't just episode 6. I guess Claire and I wanted to also talk about the content of what we have shared in the last 5 episodes, and reflect on how each of the episodes aims to take our listeners on a bit of a journey through, I guess, some of the common themes that we see occur as supervisors of supervisees in our professional lives. Uh, yeah, so if we think back to episode 1, we started with episode 1 supervision because we felt like supervision, it is a fundamental aspect of that early career psychologist or therapist's development. And we spend so much time with our supervisor. They are so fundamental in how we develop and acquire skills, and how we become competent and confident in what we do. We thought we just have to start with supervision. It's just the one of the most important parts of what we experience when we are learning. Do you have anything to share on that, Claire?
Yes, well, I think that, and we don't often talk about that. It's one of those things we have to do, but breaking it down, I think, was really important. And actually, just through discussing with you, Isabel,
Mm.
some of the things that you do in supervision, I think I took something away from that myself as well, and some learning from that myself.
Yeah.
Because we're used to doing things the way that we do things. And
Mm.
so collaborating with somebody else on the same topic, we're always learning, always taking in, like you say, those little nuggets of gold that we can
Yeah.
then go and apply. Um,
Yeah.
and often they're very little nuggets, but they build up over time, because I think that when we
Yeah.
take on little things, and as you say, with incremental implementation, that's
Mm.
when we can begin to really focus on getting something done, and putting some
Mm.
changes in place. So for
Mm.
me, it's also been a great learning process as well.
Yeah.
I
I
also think,
I Yep,
sorry.
you go. You go.
So I also think it was really important, I think, to both of us to share some of our own experiences, which were at some points in our own careers not ideal,
Yeah.
and
And
not,
this
yeah,
speaks to episode 2, doesn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's like, not, some things are just not ideal, and
Mm.
how we navigated that, and also some of the experiences, I think, that we can all relate to. That's what we're hoping for, is that our
Mm.
listeners will relate to some of what we're saying, that we might touch on some of the experiences, particularly
Mm.
those that are challenging, and begin to both normalize and validate those,
Mm.
and also give people some reassurance that we can move past them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like these podcast episodes are a recording of two psychs doing a peer supervision, almost having supervision with each other, and talking about really openly and authentically some of the things that we experience and what we do. And I think episode 2 was really like that. I don't know that I'd ever talked much with some of my colleagues about my own sort of experiences and anxieties as I was an early career therapist. I don't think I'd really talked openly about going and seeing an EAP therapist through my organization. These are things that would come up one-on-one, but projecting them to the world, sharing them with everyone here, it's absolutely just about normalizing it and letting everyone know that this is completely acceptable and a wonderful experience and process that we all go through, even though sometimes it's tough and scary.
Yeah, it can be. And we're so used to looking out for everybody else. We're looking out for our clients. It's almost like we're conditioned to take care of others. And yet it's so important to take care of ourselves.
Mm, mm,
And
mm,
that self-care piece is rarely covered in any of the training.
mm,
And it's often not modeled in the workplace as well. The business
mm.
needs everybody to see X number of clients,
Yep,
and often more clients are booked in, and just in
yep,
case there are cancellations, and it's not taking care of the need of the clinician. Like if there is a cancellation, well, that sometimes is an opportunity to, take a breather and to reflect, which is actually a really important component of our work that's often
yeah.
not allowed for in the workplace because time-wise, it's
Mm,
something that we often do in our own time. It's not valued in that way.
mm,
And
mm,
so we often don't talk about our own struggles because there's an expectation, even if it's unsaid and unconsciously implemented, that we need to soldier on and just
mm,
deliver care for others.
mm. So, if you are a therapist who has experienced a workplace that has had a big emphasis on, I guess, the economical side or financial side of the business and not so much on the therapist's needs and self-care, just want to encourage you to reach out to services that are available for you to talk to help process this. So, if your organization has an EAP option. They are completely confidential and you can reach out to those EAP services without anyone in your organization necessarily knowing. So I encourage you to do that. And of course, being therapists, we know that you can go to your GP and get a mental health care plan. And if things are really dire, you can call Lifeline on 13 11 14.
And we often don't talk about how challenging it can be and the mental health difficulties that therapists can
Mm,
experience. It's like we do tend to sort of soldier on. So I think it's really important that these services are available to all of us,
yeah,
including mental health
we've got to
clinicians.
break that stigma down. Yeah.
Absolutely,
I
absolutely.
I think that's sort of what episode 3 was all about. We wanted to share about what it's like being on the other side of the therapy room, so being in the client's chair, and what that's like. But very much the message of episode 3 was about, challenging the stigma, challenging the stereotype of needing to be self-sacrificing and giving, completely giving and never nurturing or nourishing ourselves, and just that mention about how do we manage when we are in a workplace that's pushing us. I think that's a valuable little message to let you know that if that's happening to you, it does happen. Doesn't mean you have to stay or talk to your peers, talk to your colleagues, and do what you need to do to look after yourself because we want our colleagues to enjoy this profession and have this be a sustainable profession that we work in for many, many years to come. And if we're going to do that, it's got to, that self-care's got to start early.
It does. And the more that we accept these positions that are, having huge expectations, 6, 7 clients a day, the more that that is
Mm,
accepted in the profession and not pushed back, and there is no
mm,
pushback against that,
mm,
then the more it's going to happen. So the more
mm.
conversations, and reaching out to peers, I think is
Yep.
also so important. Finding out what other people are doing.
Yeah.
Um, and coming back to us making the podcast, that's what we had to do. I mean, I reached out to all kinds of colleagues and Facebook groups and
Yeah.
a whole range of different networks, and people that we could ask to support us in setting up of the equipment, how a podcast actually works, just
Yeah.
reaching out to people, because actually people are normally very, very willing. Well, I was very lucky to have an incredibly supportive network. People are very willing to share their knowledge,
Mm,
particularly
mm,
people who run podcasts. That's what they're all about. And
mm.
so it was really helpful to be able to access support from other people and not feel that I couldn't ask those silly questions.
Mm.
How frequently should we release? Should we release one episode at a time? How do I host the thing? Where do
Yeah.
we put the
How do
information?
how do we put it up there?
Yes,
Exactly.
yes.
Yeah. So connecting with colleagues. This is probably the theme of this sixth episode, is that we created this podcast through connection, through being brave and having a conversation. And that is how we survive. That is how we thrive in these roles as talk therapists, as the many of us are intrinsically self-sacrificing. That's how we survive, and that's how we really enjoy doing what we're doing. So yeah, connecting, communicating, sharing, uplifting, being there for each other.
And not being afraid to ask the questions
Mm,
of other people, and being able to ask for support, because actually most of the time, particularly in our profession, people are willing to
mm,
give that. Um,
mm,
it saddens me sometimes on Facebook groups when I see anonymous posts,
mm,
and it's
mm,
sometimes it's necessary for confidentiality, but sometimes it's more there's a shame there. There's a not
mm,
want to be seen as being too
mm,
vulnerable or being publicly known for asking a particular question that most of the
mm,
time is a really fair question to
mm, mm.
ask, and one that I'm sure there is somebody else that resonates with at some point.
And yeah, most definitely. We do all experience have really common experiences doing this job, whether it is from one end having a report made about our practice by a client. That is one scenario that I could imagine would spark a lot of shame or embarrassment or fear for a clinician. From that extreme, just to that general day-to-day experience of having someone to debrief with, to share what your day has been like or what the clients have been like, that sort of thing. It's yeah, it's just so valuable.
Mm, yeah, a peer support, incredibly valuable.
Yeah. Okay.
And I guess coming back to those patterns that we have, we talk about self-sacrificing, but also there's
Mm.
the pattern of perfectionism I just wanted to address
Oh
as
yes.
well,
Oh
because
my God.
because there's a wish to want to get things right. There's a wish to want to
Mm,
do things perfectly.
mm,
And one of the things I realized very early on, I think the two of us did, that we were going to have to look at this level of good enough
mm,
because of the time constraints that we had, and to be able to go with what we had. Um,
mm.
and because although it was in some ways a slower build up, given the time that we actually did have together, I think we put this together in a very time efficient manner.
I'm yes, when I was reflecting on it and sharing with the supervisor's page saying, 12 months ago I reached out and look what we've done, I was like, wow, we did do.
We did.
We really, like, I think it was slow in the beginning, our meetups and our catch-ups, but yeah, we did pump it out. Sorry, I've kind of digressed off your topic of
No, but I
perfectionism.
think that it's important and it relates, because the what got us there was, or particularly for me, is this sort of that sense of perfectionism. Let's
Mm,
write everything out. Let's get everything right.
mm,
I can't do this until I'm ready, until I
mm,
know enough, until I'm good enough. And I
mm,
thought, gosh, if I stay with these messages, I'm never going to get anything done. We're not going to
yeah,
get this off the ground. And I think
yeah.
I wanted to share this because there is a sense of, I think, when we can tune into, and I love the term good enough, and that really is very much my background in psychodynamic therapy, and I've always loved Winnicott's work, but that sense of being a good enough therapist, but being a good enough at anything and
Mm.
producing something that is good enough. Because I imagine there are a lot of people out there listening and thinking, I can't do this yet. I'm not ready for this.
Yeah.
Don't have,
Yeah.
I've got to get
I
this.
could never be like them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. They're
And
all false beliefs.
they are.
Practice what you preach, get rid of them. No, no, it's not that cut and dry, but they'll always be there. It's about working with that internal resistance. And like I think for me, just making that first step back before I met you, Claire, just putting my videos online. And if anyone goes and watches some of those psychologists within videos, I mean, I look at them and I'm just like, oh my God, I'm embarrassed by how I talk or sometimes how I look or whatever. But gosh, I'm so glad I did it because it absolutely has brought me to where I am today. And it's taught me to try and let go of the super duper everything needs to be perfect high achiever thing and worrying about perceptions that other people will have about me, about other colleagues who know me. Are they going to judge me for doing this, or are they going to say, or is someone going to make a comment and say, "Oh, Isabelle, that's not right. The evidence says this," or whatever. It really helped me to kind of be okay with that and just see all the good that can come from it. And when I realized all the good that could come from it, all all of that sort of anxiety just kind of melted away. And I was like, no, there's so much incredible knowledge that I want to share. Um, and we have this incredible technology to do it. Like just don't hold back, just go for it.
Yeah, because it would be so easy to wait, and you could be waiting for so long.
Mm,
And it's I think, like you say, there's this wish to share, and that's really what this was all about. It wasn't about
mm,
sharing perfectly, and it wasn't
mm,
about presenting perfectly. We want to be as good as we can be. But
mm,
for anyone out there sitting there thinking, I can't do the thing I want to be doing because of all
mm,
of these things, I would encourage you to revisit that
mm.
and think about, is there a way that you could do something that would feel good enough?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
What's your step in the direction of the mountain that's ahead of you that you can do that's achievable today? All these psychological principles that hopefully we're modeling through recording these episodes and remembering as well, like hopefully as psychs, that phrase that I mentioned before, that practicing what we preach thing. Um, I feel like that's kind of what drives me as well, is that if I ever have any clients who stumble across this work that I'm doing, that they will see that I put myself out there and I practice what I preach. I take my own advice when it comes to dealing with the anxiety and dealing with the perfectionism or listening or choosing not to listen to the inner critic. It's hopefully it's being modeled for other therapists, but also for all of the clients that I've seen and that I will see in the future. And hopefully that makes me more authentic. And if it makes me more authentic, hopefully it means that I'm better able to engage and implement the interventions that I'm doing, because half the time I've done it on myself.
yes, that practice what you preach is it's not always easy, but it's an important
Mm,
one. And
mm.
actually, on that note, I one of the things I wanted to share, something that was probably the most challenging for me out of this entire process
Go
was,
on.
was being recorded on video. And
Ah,
it was something that I felt in my head, my thoughts told me that it was important, but my body really sort of suggested something otherwise. There was some
really?
hesitation around that. What it's done for me is made me realize just how daunting it is for our provisional
Mm,
psychologists who have to record their sessions
yeah.
for us to observe. Now, I've always been aware of how challenging that is, because I think most of us have at some point had to record a session for someone
Yeah.
else to observe and evaluate. And so I've always felt like I had that level of empathy and understanding for my supervisees, but it kind of went to a whole new level when I had to
Wow.
watch myself on screen afterwards, because
Yeah.
of course we were editing and reviewing some of these before they went live. And my level of comfort has increased. I can't say it's quite at the level that I'd like it to be at, but it has
Yeah.
increased. But the importance of being able to put myself in a vulnerable position, I think, was really the lesson here.
Mm.
And I guess talking to any provisional psychologists who are a little apprehensive about recording their sessions, I hear you.
Mm.
I
Mm.
see you. It is
Mm.
hard, but it's also incredibly valuable.
Mm. Mm.
And there is often a very positive outcome to that.
Mm.
And your level of comfort will increase over time.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's repeated quite a number of times over that couple of
It
years.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. I think, yeah, you do adjust and you do get used to having to see yourself and listen to yourself. It's especially uncomfortable, I remember, in those very first few sessions. And if you're doing, because now 4+2 is being phased out, we've got lots of students doing their professional masters and the clinical masters and various other masters where it's not just a supervisor who's seeing your recordings, like it might be an academic lecturer at the university. And I remember my harshest comments were from some of my academic lecturers who were watching some of my very first counseling videos that I recorded. And oh my God, my confidence initially took such a massive hit. And it did mean that I would be a bit shaky and nervous. And, I would be, my physiological symptoms would be so strong that I'd be forgetting what I was meant to be doing in the session and that sort of thing. Is that sort of, relatable for you, Claire? Can you?
Absolutely. I think
Yeah.
I've probably been very lucky to have very supportive supervisors. So I'm not sure I had too many harsh critics
Oh,
coming externally. And I think that would be incredibly challenging.
yeah. All you
But
want to do is please people and have them see that that you're going to be good at this, and then when they they tear you down, you're like, oh God.
mm,
But like what you said, it's so important for learning. I needed to have, it was probably good for me to have a bit of that not criticism, constructive feedback early on, I guess, because I've always been a bit of a talker and could talk underwater sort of thing. So I think it probably helped me because I think I maybe felt like I was going to be okay and it was going to be all right. And if I could just hold a conversation, she'll be all good. And when they picked me apart, I just went, oh my God. And then it made me, it made me take a step back and it made me think, okay, I need to take this seriously. I need to think about how it is that I'm going to deliver this message to this client in the scenario and that sort of thing. So, it's tough and it's uncomfortable, but it definitely helped me and it maybe humbled me
mm,
a little bit.
mm. So I think there definitely have been times where I've had some constructive feedback. I guess I've been lucky in the way it's been delivered, but even when it's delivered in a very constructive and beautiful way, it can still
Mm.
be very
Oh
challenging.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And
Mm,
so this is your journey. Those people who are listening, if you're a prof psych or if you're doing placements as a social worker, counselor, whatever it might be, this is the reality. Yeah, it's going to be a massive learning curve and you've got to be okay with being uncomfortable and having feedback be shared with you. Sometimes it'll be tactful, sometimes it might not be tactful. But just know that once you get through those first couple of years, it will feel better. You will be okay. You will get used to it. You've just got to kind of hold on and keep pushing through and get the support that you need, from some kind of other voices so that you can feel comforted and capable to keep moving with it.
and that's where the support network comes in. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, there have been so many learnings from this process, and I've just loved this process of us sitting here reflecting on this today.
Yeah.
The other
Me
thing
too.
that I'm not sure that we've mentioned to the extent that I would like to really let our listeners know that this has just been such an enjoyable process for me.
Yeah.
It's been so collaborative and it's been such, as I mentioned earlier, there's been some real rich learning there. And it's really brought to mind, I mean, when we first started talking about what are we gonna talk about? I mean, gosh, I think the list just went on and we had to
Yeah.
almost reel that in.
Yeah.
The profession is just so diverse. There are so many broad areas that we can cover. And I guess that's our next challenge for the next season of episodes is what are we going to talk about next?
Yeah. Yeah. So we would love to hear from you, all our listeners. What is it that you would like us to cover in the next season? What are some of the topics that you would find interesting hearing our perspective on? Are there any knowledge gaps that you might have that you would like us to share our knowledge and experience on? So please share with us your comments and your feedback also on what we've covered so far. We would love to know what you've thought about the first season that we've launched here.
We would. And in the spirit of learning, we're also very, very open to any feedback that you have on how we can improve things. What would be
Yes.
better for you? At the end of the day, this is a podcast that we want to produce for our listeners, and we want it to be valuable for you. So let us know. Let us know how we can support you
Yeah.
and what would be helpful for you,
Yeah.
because there's a
You are
lot we
you're all part of this. And so it will be extra useful for you all to participate and help us make it as good as it can be.
Yes, yes, we really would. Whatever you have to say, we would love to hear from you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks so much, Claire, for
Thank
joining
you.
me today for episode 6, final episode in our first season of Between Two Psychs.
And thank you. Thank you. It's
I,
been great. Such a
I
great
feel like I just want to go pop some champagne right now. We should celebrate.
Yes.
This is monumental. I'm so proud of us.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.